Welcome back to Midweek Fixture Podcast on the Louis Selling YouTube channel. It is season 2 episode. I don't even know what episode it is, but it is the final podcast episode of this season. The Premier League season is done. There is just a few more games left to play in cup competitions. Crystal Palace have the Conference League tonight. Arsenal have the Champions League on Saturday. And then, of course, we have the Women's FA Cup final on Sunday that will be vlogged. And I'm sure we'll mention that a little bit at the end. But, of course, I am with Annabel Bassett. We're going to be reacting to our Premier League predictions that we did at the start of the season, a few days before the first game week. So, yeah, without further ado, let's get into some frankly terrible predictions, and maybe there might be a few good ones in there as well. But sit back, relax, and welcome back, or welcome to Midweek Fixture. So, Annabel, how are you this afternoon in this, I'm going to say lovely hot weather, but maybe it isn't for some, especially not yesterday with how hot it was.
Yeah, it's literally been boiling. I think as English people, we sort of complain it's either too cold or too hot, and I'm sort of on the too hot side. It's literally t-shirt weather, and I actually don't have many of those because we never really get nice weather around this time of the year, or maybe we do and I'm just not familiar, but it's nice. I just hope it's not a blip and we actually have a good continuous summer of sun.
Well, to ruin that, it's going to rain all next week apparently, but that is the typical English weather, but that is not what we are here for, talking about the weather. We're doing our Premier League predictions. We're going to start from bottom to top, look at the actual table, say where we predicted each team and a little bit why that happened, and a little bit about why we think each team finished where they actually did. So, bottom to top, 20th was Wolves, and I will let you start this one.
Yeah, I think with Wolves, I predicted them higher than 20th. I originally had them at 16th, so I thought they were just about going to survive. I think they made some signings that I thought may help them, like Strand Lanston came in, obviously then went to Palace. We also had, just several players. I think there was a new fullback they brought in for Nelson Semedo, who was like, Wolf was in his name. I can remember, we sort of distinctly talked about him. It was quite a cool nickname, and obviously joining from two Wolves. But yeah, obviously bottom, as we say, was Burnley, so Wolves. So Burnley was slightly higher than where I had them. I had Burnley bottom. So yeah, I didn't get that one right at all.
Yeah, I mean, Wolves, I also had 16th. I thought they would be in and around the relegation fight, but they just about stay up. I thought Vitor Pereira was a good manager at the end of the season for Wolves, kept them up as well. But that didn't really go to plan for him at the start of this season. I don't think they won until this year. I don't think they won any game at the end of 2025. Then, of course, the new manager came in. His name has completely slipped my mind. Why can't I remember his name? But the new manager came in. He did a pretty good job, to be fair. Got them a few wins under their belt. Got them a few points on the board. They did still finish bottom, but it was a much better end to the season than the start of the season. They brought in a few players, but they did lose a few as well. Cunha, of course, left the club, which is probably their best player last season. Strand Larsson, as you said, left as well. So I can see why they finished 20th, but I didn't expect them to be as bad as they were, especially the start of the season. But Wolves bottom, yeah, I don't think 16th was an outrageous prediction from either of us. But yeah, the first one being incorrect is never what you want. No. Then on to 19th. It was Burnley who finished 19th. I predicted them to finish 20th, bottom of the league. So I did get them in the relegation zone. I don't think you can be too mad at that. If you're 1 or 2 places off, that's usually a pretty good prediction. But Burnley going down, I think 99% of people expected this. The manager, Scott Parker, is a decent manager. He plays quite a bland style of football, but that does get them over the line. They did pick up quite a few wins, but when I watched them play Brighton at home and away, they really didn't impress me that much. So I'm not surprised that they finished 19th, and I'm not surprised that they went down.
No, neither. I predicted them to be in 20th, as I already said, so they actually improved sort of my expectations. I thought they'd just struggle, maybe didn't have too much going forward in that area, and I thought Burnley would really struggle coming up. Obviously, Trafford used to be their goalkeeper, and then things changed there. I know some of their players had also departed. So for them to come up into the Premier League, I thought it might be a step too far. And it proved to be that case. I think they conceded quite a few goals this season. And yeah, we know that they've recently been in really poor form, because I know when we were discussing sort of Arsenal facing Burnley as one of the last games of the season, could Burnley do a job? And a lot of people thought, they're already down and relegated and just, we're in poor form. So yeah, I think that just really shows. But yeah, as I say, I actually anticipated them to be bottom, so they did slightly better, but still getting relegated, and it'll be, I think, a tough task for them to try and come back, as we see with a lot of teams when they get relegated from the Premier League.
Yeah, I mean, the Championship next season looks outrageous. West Ham, Wolves, Burnley, Southampton, if they do keep their players, Wrexham and Birmingham with their money as well, it could be really, really competitive. You said about Burnley's front line maybe not being the best. I've got to give a lot of credit to Zion Fleming. Scored 10 plus goals this season. I'd be very surprised if he's still at Burnley next season. If your striker's scoring 10 and you're going down, that's probably somewhat unlucky that the rest of the team hasn't performed. Kyle Walker as well joined. I don't think he played as well as they were hoping. So yeah, I mean, I'm not surprised they went down, as I said, but Zion Fleming, I expect him to be in the Premier League next season. Looks a really, really useful signing for maybe a Coventry, a Hull or an Ipswich coming up, or an Everton. Maybe they need a better striker. I'm sure we'll get onto that a bit later in the episode. But yeah, Burnley 19th, not the worst prediction from either of us there, thinking they'll finish bottom. In 18th now, this is one of my poorer predictions. West Ham did get that last relegation spot. They are going down, which is really, really bad for them, but we'll come on to that. I predicted them to finish 11. I thought they'd have a solid season under Graham Potter. That was really not the case. They then moved over to Nuno Espirito Santo, and to be fair to him, he did a really good job. He did the best job that he could. Second half of the season when he joined, they had top 10 form, so they probably shouldn't have gone down. 39 points, one of the highest points tallies to ever be relegated from the Premier League. West Ham are top with about 43, so only 4 points off that, but to go down on 39 is devastating for them. But they have a good squad, so it is really surprising to see them go down. Mateus Fernandes, I think Diouf's a good player. West Ham fans might disagree with me. Crossing-wise, I think he's really good. Defensively, I can kind of see where they're coming from. Mavropanos, a fantastic centre-back. Jared Bowen as well, the captain. Does he stay? Does he go? We shall see. But they have good players, so for them to go down, I'm very surprised.
Yeah, same. I think it was devastating. I mean, I know someone who's a West Ham fan, sort of close to me, and he goes to a lot of their games. And yeah, he just said it will absolutely kill the club potentially if they do go down, because it's such a, you lose a lot of money and sort of revenue. And we don't know how many spectators they'll now continue to get at the London Stadium now they're in the Championship. But yeah, I think it was really sad to see, but it was such a tight, sort of cool in that relegation battle right until the end. I mean, on the last day, if Tottenham hadn't beaten Everton, I believe that, West Ham maybe could have been able to pull it back had they won their last game. So it was all touch and go, but I think a big name really in the Premier League going down is never something that people want to see. And as you said, I didn't predict it. I actually had in 18th Brentford, just because of all the players that they lost. Obviously they lost their manager and Thomas Frank, and then their goalkeeper, and just so many key players to them, Brian Mbuemo, Johan Visa. But they've obviously impressed me and far disproved me wrong. But at the time I thought Brentford would just have sort of this gaping hole, and perhaps even a gamble in their manager coming in with Keith Andrews potentially, I think was interviewed at one stage. There was a lot of sort of turbulence, I think, at the club. But yeah, they've completely, as I say, proved us wrong and done far better. But I didn't think West Ham would be the team to finish 18th in Brentford's place.
Yeah, it is crazy. And as you said, the money they're going to lose going down and the money they're going to have to pay for that stadium, they do apparently have a bit off of the rent next season because they had a deal if they go down. So they're kind of anticipating that, which is surprising. But
yeah, in
some ways, maybe it's a good thing for them that they've gone down. The owners need to buck their ideas up. They've kind of killed the club recently. They won that Conference League title a few years ago. Now they're in the same division as some teams that you'd never expect them to be into. But yeah, I mean, it is a really bad prediction. I thought they'd finish 11th. Not the best.
Yeah, I don't actually know where I put West Ham. I think I put them... Got so many notes on here from prior. Yeah, I put them in 15th. So I actually thought they'd be sort of like mid-table and be okay. But as I say, considering the amount of players that Brentford lost, and as we mentioned, Jared Bowen has been really key, but I guess not enough in terms of you can't just have one man sort of scoring your goals and being that leader. So yeah, it's been difficult. But you say the quality they've got in their team, I don't know if they're going to be able to hold on to, as you say, the likes of Mavropanos and yeah, I don't know where it'll go for them, but I was shocked to see them with that quality, as you mentioned, going down.
And another team that has a lot of quality individually, I thought they did really well this season. It didn't pan out that way with Thomas Frank. In 17th was Tottenham Hotspur. I will let you go with this one first because my predictions were very bad.
I think we both predicted Tottenham so high. I thought Thomas Frank coming in, he did so well with Brentford, and I thought this is a move that potentially will really help Tottenham. Obviously, they signed Mohamed Kudus in the summer, who was a really key player for West Ham. Perhaps as well, we didn't touch on that with West Ham, but maybe that's why they also struggled. But yeah, I think with Tottenham, I just thought they'd have far too much quality to go down, and we've seen that. Yeah, obviously they didn't go down, but it was a very narrow call, and it's been a very turbulent time once again with managers in and out the door for Spurs. But yeah, my prediction actually for 17th was Sunderland. So I think, yeah, I predicted them to just about survive relegation. I know we'd discussed how they were going to hopefully impress, and Granit Xhaka coming in and several other players were going to sort of lead them to just about be safe. But yeah, they completely, I think, proved us wrong. On that front, and as we'll come on to, have got, Europa League, which is an incredible feat. But for Spurs, yeah, I never anticipated that. I think I put them all the way up in, let's see, I think I must have put them around 5th or 6th. Yeah, I put them 5th originally, so I thought, they'd be getting Champions League at the end of the season, but in fact they're just about evading relegation, which I think a lot of their fans thought would have happened at one point, and yeah, just a nightmare season for them. But I think injuries do also play a part for sure this season.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I predicted them to finish third. I thought they'd challenge for the title for a little bit of the season, drop off a bit. I thought Frank would do really, really well. That is not the case. Tottenham fans absolutely despise him now. But a lot of the players as well were saying he's not a manager that could manage a team like Tottenham that want to be right at the top, which is surprising to see because he did really well at Brentford. But there is that theory that most managers who do well at Brentford take that next step and they kind of fall off quite a lot, which is really, really interesting to see. But the main thing for Tottenham is those injuries. Maddison, Kulusevski and so many more. There is an internal investigation going on at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium looking into that medical staff and what went wrong there. But they did just about stay up. The form guide probably should have made us predict them to finish this low because they finished 17th last season. But next season with De Zerbi, I feel like I said this every season with Tottenham, but next season with De Zerbi, surely they get European football again. He did really well to keep them up. They've been playing much better football. They're going to make some big, big signings in the summer for sure. I think he keeps them or gets them back into that European football. There's European places next season.
Yeah, I don't know. With Spurs, I've sort of lost faith because obviously predicting them 5th, I thought, well, this is the season for them to do really well under Thomas Frank. And then, as you mentioned there, all the fans despise him. So I'm like, who can they bring in? Who's going to deliver? I mean, obviously, they had Ange Postecoglou who joined from Celtic, but still I thought he'd be the one. And as you mentioned, De Zerbi and the European football you think Spurs will get. Obviously, he managed to get that with Brighton as well. So that was incredible, that Europa League campaign, which I know you as an avid Brighton fan, absolutely loved that time. And the football you played under him was some of your best. But I just don't know with Tottenham. I just have kind of lost faith. I think if we do predictions next season, not giving too much of a spoiler, I don't think I see them in the top 5 because there's so much competition there. And you would arguably say this season there hasn't been enough level and consistency from teams. So I just think if the league goes up a notch, I don't see Tottenham being able to fit in there because there's so much work to be done. But it depends who they sign. I mean, I know they've been linked with Savinho, who, as a Manchester City fan, I know a lot about him, and that would be an interesting move to see if he can sort of revitalise his little spell that hasn't gone too well with us. But I don't know, those sorts of signings, I don't see helping them into the top 5.
I think they kind of are the type of players that De Zerbi will like, and everyone sort of underestimates De Zerbi. I think a lot of people did to keeping them up. So I have a lot of faith in them next season, but for some reason I always have faith in Tottenham. Up into 16th now. I am so happy with this prediction. I don't think many people expected them to finish where they were. But they didn't really impress me that much last season. It was Nottingham Forest. They finished 16th. I predicted them in 15th, so one place off. They could have gone down. They were right in that relegation battle for most of the season. They pulled away towards the end, and they made a Europa League semi-final. So overall, not the worst season in Europe for them, but in the league, an absolute disaster. And they will not be playing European football next season. But yeah, happy with this prediction. I didn't think they'd do that well this season because of the players that they had. There's just something about them that I just didn't think it would click, and I didn't think they'd have that depth or quality to handle 4 competitions, and that proved to be the case.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they lost Alanga, didn't they, as well, and several other players. So yeah, I don't know. I think with the team, I predicted them. Sorry, I got so many. This is old notes from when we last predicted, and then I've got the table sort of down below. But in 16th, are we looking at? I said Wolves, which I sort of said before, but you said Forest were there. For me, I actually predicted Forest instead of ending 16th where they did. I put 10th. So I think that was an audacious prediction, as you say, trying to handle different competitions. And yeah, they obviously didn't do as well as I'd imagined. I'm just trying to find. Here we go. Yeah, so because obviously they finished seventh last season under Nuno Espirito Santo, so I thought maybe then this season they'd sort of drop a little bit because of Europe, but they'd still manage to be there. And I said originally in the predictions we did at the beginning of the season that Chris Wood would need to perform big again. So I just think it's difficult. And we also mentioned AFCON coming into play with them this season. Perhaps that played a part as well. But yeah, I think kind of losing Alanga and yeah, they just haven't been able to, as you say, get that output that's helped them up the table to where I anticipated. So just about surviving, but I guess I'll be pleased with that, at least to stay in the league. And as you mentioned, they had a really good run in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, I think the big thing we need to talk about and be a bit wary of because of who he is, but the owner, Mr. Marinakis, I mean,
Yeah,
what he was doing with the managerial appointments, sacked Vitor Pereira, sacked not sacked Vitor Pereira. He's got him in. He's done well. Got him on a new contract. Sacked Nuno. Sorry.
yeah,
Appointed Am Postecoglou. Sacked Am Postecoglou. Brought in Sean Dyche. Sacked him. Has now got Vitor Pereira, who has had a good end to the season for them and did keep them up. But it was so many changes, all up and down. Just something a bit wrong there, and I think that has impacted them on the pitch. They've gone from a defensive style to a really open attacking style, and then back to a defensive style. So yeah, I mean, I think the owner can take quite a lot of blame for where they finished in the league. But we'll see what happens with them in the summer. I'm expecting them to lose Gibbs White, Anderson, maybe a few others. Maybe they could be one of the candidates to go down again next season.
Yeah, I think that's true, especially if, as you mentioned, Elliot Anderson and Morgan Gibbs White, who I know was disappointed not to make the England squad. These sorts of players who have performed for the team and are really important to them in that midfield. We know, for controlling games especially is really important. So, yeah, that is a good early shout, I think, for Forest in terms of how they replace those players because they are just so hard to try and recover that abilities that they have. And also, as you mentioned with Marinakis, I think, yeah, I mean, Nuno Espirito Santo is doing so well with them, as we mentioned, got them to seventh last season. So I thought they could build on that. But clearly, when a manager sort of speaks out against him or they just sort of have this disagreement, he was, sort of him over everything else. And what was best for the club, I think, at that point was to keep Nuno in. But clearly, the relationship had gone sort of too far and that bridge couldn't be built again. So, really interesting owner that they've got there. And I think someone who's difficult to sort of handle in club.
Yeah, absolutely. But into 15th now, and this section of the table, 15th to about 6th, to be honest, was the hardest to predict this season because there's only a few points in here between the teams, separating the teams. But who did you go with in 15th, and where did they actually finish?
I actually went with West Ham, so they finished 18th and just went down. But I thought they would be safe, as we mentioned, Jared Bowen, obviously Elos Kudos, but you mentioned about Mavropanos, Souček, who I know hasn't played too much this season, but those sorts of players with the quality that they have, I thought they would be okay. You mentioned Fernandez as well, a fullback who's brilliant with his deliveries. So yeah, I was surprised that they didn't finish where I anticipated, but 15th was actually taken over by Crystal Palace. So, again, difficult for them, I think, juggling different competitions. I think they've had a fair few amount of injuries as well. Correct me if I'm sort of wrong on that front. So I think for them, it's been really difficult to juggle. Obviously, you mentioned right at the beginning of this pod, they're in the conference final, which is massive for them, and they'll want to win, another trophy after winning the FA Cup last season. So it's time for silverware almost for the Eagles, which is impressive. But in the Premier League, I think they definitely struggled more than I thought they would. And yeah, they finished 15th as opposed to I put West Ham.
Where did you predict Palace to finish?
I actually had them in 12th. So not too much of a gap, but still I thought they'd be sort of pushing toward mid-table and sort of that top half of the table rather than in 15th.
Yeah, I mean, Palace 15th, I predicted them 13th, so not a bad prediction again, only 2 off. They haven't focused on the league that much season. They focused enough to be able to comfortably stay up. Obviously, Palace in their first European campaign, they're going to focus on that. They have a really good chance to win it tonight against Rayo Vallecano. as a Brighton fan, that meme from the FIFA president comes to mind today. I feel Spanish, but I do expect the Eagles to win the Conference League, and it puts them into the Europa League. So it'll be a fantastic season for them, despite finishing 15th. But I think our reason for putting them in around this 13th position was exactly what you said: juggling different competitions. They had that hanging thing with UEFA where they were actually demoted to the Conference League for that multi-club ownership. They've had so many injuries. Wharton, one of the main ones. They've lost Gahey. Mateta had a big injury and he basically went on strike for half the season. Yeah, I don't think 13th is a bad position. I honestly don't think 15th place finish for them is a bad finish if they win the Conference League. If they do not win the Conference League tonight, it kind of is a disastrous season for them, and they're right back to square one. Oliver Glasner leaving as well. Who replaces him? I don't know. It could be Andoni Iraola, but that kind of seems like a sideways, maybe even backward step if that does happen.
Yeah, I think it could be a step down. But as you mentioned there, like losing Gahey, losing Eze as well to Arsenal, who hasn't, played too many minutes, but he can be influential for them at times. You can see, the quality he possesses with the goals and just his overall play, sort of he's gone to, as we say, that step up. But I think that leaves a really big hole. I know Palace fans are massively fond of Eze, had him for years at the club. And you mentioned as well, Gahey, I think he's sort of transformed Manchester City in some ways, still obviously adapting. But I think that change midway through the season really helped Manchester City, but completely at the loss of Palace. And I know that Glasner was actually quite adamant, wasn't he, that he wanted to keep Gahey. It was kind of him and Gahey together or neither, and that's sort of come to a head now where he will be leaving. So yeah, I think really tough. And when you lose those sorts of players, it is expected that you'll struggle. And as you mentioned, if they sort of had one eye more on European competition, maybe that impacted it as well. But again, I think they're going to have to really revitalise the squad surely if they're going to be in Europa League, if they win, as you mentioned, the Conference League tonight.
Yeah, for sure. But into 14th, and I think that this is the first team that deserves a decent clap. So well done to Leeds, finishing 14th, staying up by 18, by 8 points. Pretty comfortable for them in the end. Went on a fantastic run with Daniel Farke. I didn't think he had it in him, but he did. They were going to sack him apparently. Then he went on to beat some absolutely massive teams. I predicted them to go down in 19th, so they've exceeded my expectations, and they weren't that far off European football, to be fair. There was only a few points in there, so well done to Leeds. And if they have a good summer, I think they could be even higher next season. But Leeds exceeded mine and your expectations, I think.
Yeah, I think so. I think, where did I predict them originally? I had them in... Oh, hang on. I had them originally in 19th, as we said earlier, but to finish 14th is so impressive. I actually had Fulham in that position, but obviously they did finish higher in the table, which we'll come on to. But for Leeds, I'm really impressed. I mean, you look at their top goal scorer being Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who's, again, struggled at times this season, I think, especially with injuries, always sort of been plagued with injuries in his past of his career. But yeah, he's had a bit of a run of form toward the end of the season, which I think has really helped. Daniel Farke, as you say, he was under pressure. But yeah, I think Calvert-Lewin's really helped them out of that and got some really top results toward the end of the campaign. And yeah, they've really impressed me in terms of managing to be higher than I sort of anticipated. As I say, I thought they would, I think I said, go down. So really impressive from them.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the big thing to take from Leeds, and we'll get onto Sunderland a bit later, is that it's not a guarantee that the newly promoted clubs will go down. Leeds can finish mid-table, Sunderland can get European football. Will we see the same thing with Hull, Coventry and Ipswich next season? I'm not so sure, but we'll come on to that in a few months' time once the window is done. But I don't think there's much to say on Leeds. Well done, exceed everyone's expectation, and I do think you can build to get back into Europe again. Maybe not next season, but definitely the seasons after that. Into 13th. Now, this one's an interesting prediction from me. Everton did finish 13th. I predicted them 7th. When you look at it, 5 places off is quite big. But then you finish 5 points off 7th and then 4 points off 8th. So it is really, really tight. And this is kind of the area where it's going to throw off everyone's predictions and their points. But as I said, I think near the start of the pod, if Everton had a better striker, they really could have been in those European places. They threw a couple of games away at the end of the season, and they should have been much, much closer than they were. I know 5 points isn't a lot, but they should have been getting it, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think they've been a top team this season. I mean, as you mentioned, Barry, maybe not so much a clinical striker, and same with Beto, those two sort of competing for that role. And I guess maybe when, I think it was Barry signed, that you could have thought that they maybe finished higher. But for me, I wasn't so sure. I actually predicted Everton in 13th. So it's the first prediction that I've got correct. Obviously, they signed Grealish, who then sort of had an injury, but I think he was influential for them at one point. Had a lot of joy, sort of with Gay in the midfield, and then you sort of had Dewsbury Hall, who I think has been great on the flank for them. So yeah, I think they've had quite a few players up front, and as you say, they've created a lot of chances. It's just Barry hasn't maybe been as clinical as they'd like, and same with Beto. And as you mentioned, some of their results toward the end of the season hasn't helped them with where they finished, but they've put on some terrific performances. I can't particularly remember results, funnily enough, aside from the Manchester City game, which was crucial toward the end of the season. And yeah, obviously it ended 3-3, so that was a top game from them. And when you sort of play them away, I know that you've said the atmosphere isn't so great, but it seemed like City got embroiled in that game and the quick transitions of Everton, and they were 3-1 up sort of in a blink of an eye. So I think a really impressive display from them. And as you mentioned, them throwing away points in a way with Doku scoring that late goal, it then meant they didn't get all three, which they arguably could have deserved that game. So yeah, some top performances, and I think it's interesting. I predicted them 13th. I probably wouldn't have said that, I don't know, halfway through the season, so it was a gamble from me, but it paid off.
Yeah, and as you said, they have some fantastic players. They have a really good core group. And Jai, Gay, Dewsbury Hall, fantastic players. If they can keep hold of Grealish, I'm not so sure. I think he may be part of Maresca's plans, but we'll get on to City and Maresca somewhat soon. Yeah, I mean, maybe next season, if they do get that striker, they can get European football. David Moyes, I think, has done really, really well. It was quite funny that West Ham were relying on him to get a result against Tottenham at the end of the season to keep them up after they all wanted him gone. He won them the Conference League, and that apparently wasn't enough for the Irons. But yeah, Everton 13th, a solid season for them, but I think a lot of fans and the club will be thinking they should have taken a little bit more from it.
Yeah, it's true, 100%. As we say, they kind of didn't have results toward the end of the season go their way. Otherwise, they could have been sort of up there, especially as we know how tight mid-table's been. Literally, you drop points and it sort of moves you all the way down, or if you gain points, it moves you up. So really tight. But I think for them, they'll be sort of pleased with that, and I guess they'll be hoping to build on that next season, as you say. Depends if they can keep players like Grealish, which we'll come on to.
Yeah, into 12th. Not many people are talking about this team, but I think they've arguably had the worst Premier League season out of all of the teams, considering where people predicted them, and that is Newcastle. I predicted them to finish 9th, just missing out on European football, but they've been quite bad this season. I thought they'd be a lot better, considering how much money they spent. Yes, I know they lost Isak, but they replaced him with Walter and Visa, who they spent a fair bit of money on. Yeah, I think in the summer they could be in trouble, losing quite a few players. Anthony Gordon has been linked with Bayern, and just this morning he's been linked with Barcelona, who are apparently in intensive talks with Newcastle. Tonali, Joe Linton, Bruno Gamars could all go. Lewis Hall's another one apparently on Manchester United's radar. So they could be in trouble, and to finish 12th, I think that's really, really poor from them.
Yeah, it is. I've been shocked. Whenever I sort of look at a Newcastle result and where they're on the table, I'm kind of just stunned, because we kind of started to associate them with that sort of Champions League bracket in the top 6, and that's exactly where I had them. I had them in 6th, so you did better sort of with your prediction saying they'd miss out on European football. But yeah, I think things haven't gone to plan. I mean, I know a lot of Newcastle fans want to free Voltemade, if you like, who obviously they signed and was going to be perhaps a great player for Newcastle. I know you were a big sort of fan of him with that intricate footwork that he has, but also the massive stature, almost Haaland-esque. But yeah, I think he's sort of been demoted to the bench at times, which fans have been confused about and sort of said free Voltemade sort of from this situation. And I know a lot of fans aren't happy with Eddie Howe's team selection, so it all seems to be that there's a lot of animosity there. Whereas at one point Eddie Howe was being, praised in talks with England, that sort of conversation around him moving, and he didn't want to. He absolutely loved it. With Newcastle. So yeah, things have turned quite sour for them. And as you mentioned, Gordon's been a top player for them and is being linked away with a move which will never help. Harvey Barnes as well is someone that I really like, but again, not consistent enough. I find that toward the beginning of the season he was doing really well and then sort of again tails off. So yeah, it's been tough, and I think with Visa as well, I think, didn't he pick up an injury? But prior to that, he wasn't really playing, so his whole season's been completely affected. And whenever I've watched him play for Newcastle, which has been rare, he hasn't impressed me. So I think it's been a really difficult start for him, whereas we thought Voltemade coming in Elanga, this would be sort of a top side in that, top heavy. But also, what a great midfield as well. Bruno Guimaraes, Tonali, these sorts of players. I was anticipating them to be so much stronger and finish so much higher.
Yeah, I mean, on Eddie Howe, he was persisting with playing Anthony Gordon as a striker and putting Voltermine in the midfield, which I think is really, really strange. Many Newcastle fans weren't happy with that. Yes, they've had some injuries, but do you think he's under pressure?
I kind of think he must be. Like, surely with the way that they finished, it's just going to be really tough, I think, for them to sort of see a way around it because Visa hasn't done as well as they anticipated. You say the money they've sort of spent on these players as well, that automatically creates pressure and expectation. And it's all about the fans as well. I think once you lose the fans, it can be really tough. I don't know how they sort of come back from that. And I think for Newcastle, they'll be looking at maybe another manager and sort of putting that pressure on Howe. But I've always really liked him as a manager. I don't know if I'm just sort of that one, as you say, it's quite odd for him to be playing Voltemada in a deeper role. But for me, I've always thought he was a top manager. So, yeah, interesting if they do decide to part ways. But I don't know what you think, if you think he's under pressure and if he should be as well.
I think he's under a lot of pressure, and I think he should be under a lot of pressure. Newcastle are a team that need to be getting towards those European spots, probably need to be getting them. Yes, they had European football again, that's kind of impacted them, but it'll be a big sum for them. It'll be interesting to keep an eye on Newcastle and see what happens with them. I think there could be a lot of change for them these coming weeks and months. But into 11th, just finishing outside the top 10, a team that was so close to getting European football. They were pushing, and it just fell off a little bit at the end. That is Fulham. I'll let you go on this one. Tell me what you think about them, their season, and where did you predict them?
Yeah, I predicted them in... Let me have a look. I had them in 14th. And obviously they finished far higher. As you say, they just missed out on European football, finishing... Oh, where are they? Yeah, 11th. Sorry, my table, the way I wrote it is so confusing for my brain anyway. But yeah, I think they've definitely exceeded my expectations and had, a strong season and been a threat. I definitely think their front line for me has sort of really impressed me, some of the games that I've watched with them and some of the goals as well. But yeah, I'm just going to look at my notes of what I originally wrote at the beginning of the season because it'll be interesting to reflect on why I sort of put them lower if it loads. I had them all the way down in 14th. Let me find.
That's an outrageous prediction to think that
I didn't even write anything. I just wrote no Europe at the time when we did the podcast originally, which is really helpful. But yeah, obviously they had no European football, which perhaps in such a tight sort of table has helped them to climb up. But yeah, I thought at one point they were going to get Europe, so just kind of missing out. But for me, I think they've impressed more than what I anticipated. So yeah, I think credit sort of to what they've managed to do this season.
Yeah, a lot of credit needs to go to them. They've done better than me, you, and most people thought they were going to do. But missing out on European football, I think, could be really, really detrimental to them. The manager could leave. Jose Mourinho going to Real Madrid from Benfica. I think Silva could be and probably is top of Benfica's list to replace Jose. So I think they could lose their manager. Harry Wilson is leaving on a free, apparently. Big player, probably their best player this season. So yeah, next season it'll be interesting to see how they do. They have not got European football again. Maybe that'll help them with 9 teams again having European football in the Premier League. Maybe that'll help them crack into those European spots again. But this season, 11th is not a bad season. They finished just 1 point off of that 8th place, which was Conference League. So at the start of the season, I think Fulham would have taken that. But how the league was, they'll probably feel like it is a missed opportunity.
Yeah, I think as I mentioned with that forward line as well, like you mentioned Wilson, that would be a big miss if he goes. But I've liked sort of Iwobi this season. They haven't played Oscar Bob too much, which I think is quite interesting. But obviously Chukwueze as well. So they've got some strong players, but I think just consistency maybe is lacking for them. But yeah, I think for the team, as you say, it'll be really disappointing to just miss out. But they definitely exceeded, I think, at least our expectations. I don't know what they sort of felt in club. I'm sure they would have been confident of that. But it'll be interesting to see sort of where they can build from here because of those sort of signings that can maybe be embedded, as I believe Chukwueze only joined last season, didn't he? And obviously Bob as well is yet to really play too much football.
Yeah, I mean, I also predicted them 14th, and I'm thinking that neither of us are going to be predicting them that low next season, but we'll see how the window goes. As I said, everything we say here about teams next season could be completely thrown out the window depending on the summer transfer window. Yeah. But now into the top 10. Team I had so much faith in, a team that I constantly praise. And with Xabi Alonso next season, it'll probably be the same again, and I think they're going to do fantastically well. Of course, that is Chelsea in 10th. I predicted them to finish second. I thought they were going to do really well. They have a good squad. You look at the players, the individual players they have at the team and out on loan. It's incredible. Arguably, as I said, I think in that episode, one of, if not the best squads in the Premier League with the players that they have. Esteval, João Pedro, Cole Palmer, Enzo Fernandez, Moises Caicedo, Marc Cucurella, Levi Colwill, Reece James. They need a new goalkeeper, that's for sure. Robert Sanchez has always been inconsistent. Mike Pendez coming back from loan if he starts for them next season. They've signed Valentin Barco. Next season, I'm probably going to predict Chelsea high again, but this season they've completely missed a huge opportunity again to get that European football, and finishing 10th with the money they've spent. So bad. They unfairly sacked Maresca, in my opinion. Well, was he sacked? Did he leave? There's a bit of a falling out there. Appointed Liam Rosenior. That didn't go very well. Arguably one of the weirdest managers in the Premier League. I really rate him still. I think he's a good manager. Done really well at Strasbourg. But Chelsea can ruin any manager at the moment. And then Callum McFarlane did a decent-ish job towards the end of the season as interim. But yeah, Chelsea, you've let me down in these predictions.
Yeah, I think you always predict them so high, as you say, because they've got a young, talented squad. But I think that's sort of part of the issue. And I know we've discussed since that they're maybe going to change to a different model where they give the manager more control with Xabi Alonso coming in and sort of allowing them to have maybe a more experienced squad as well. So perhaps they'll change that model. But if they don't next season, I can't continue to predict them high. It's the same with Tottenham. They continuously let you down, and these managers as well, they sort of ruin them with the way maybe the clubs run more of that head coach role, and these sort of sporting directors who are more business savvy, I'd say, than football savvy, sort of getting involved with who can play and who can't. And obviously that's why Enzo Maresca had a problem with it, and he'd done so well with them. So it was surprising, earning silverware under Maresca that they'd then sack him. And I think since it's just not been the same, and as we say, Rosenior, it hasn't worked out at all. They've had some really poor results under him. But yeah, I'm surprised with how things have gone. I mean, João Pedro shows his quality at times, but again, I think it's always that question of consistency. Same with Esteval. I think he started really well, and me and you were saying he's such an exciting young prospect for them. But again, not really kicked on. And with Reece James as well, I think he's probably been one of their best players. But again, I don't know how much he's played this season. He's always struggled with injury. I think if you keep him fit, brilliant player for Chelsea. But there's arguably not enough of them maybe who have been on form this season. So I think, yeah, they've definitely sort of let us down with these predictions. And I know Chelsea fans as well have said when like Delap sort of played as well that he's been poor and, has really struggled to compete like we thought he maybe would with Pedro for that striker role. So yeah, it's just been a really interesting and sort of poor season from whenever I've watched them. They just lack that sort of, I don't know, that flow. And obviously, as we mentioned, with Palmer being out as well, it's just, not been ideal for them in terms of those creative players and the output that they've had.
Yeah, where did you predict them?
I actually had them all the way in fourth, which just shows how much I sort of backed them. I don't know where they finished last season, but I feel like I was sort of hoping that they'd then continue to push on and it looked positive. But as we say with Chelsea and sort of the way their clubs ran, there's been a lot of disarray. And I actually think Callum McFarlane's probably done the strongest job whenever I've seen him sort of come in from the lower team. I think it was under-21s he was manager of. He's done a really good job with them and sort of instilled the basics, and I think that's sort of what they've needed. But yeah, to finish all the way down in the 10th, is a nightmare. And again, Chelsea, that big stature of the club and the money that they spend, they should be getting European football, as we say, at the least, that Conference or Europa League spot.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think the summer window will be a big tell. As you said, they're going to give Xavi quite a lot of control, apparently. I mean, if they're going to continue to sign players like Garnacho, Gittins and so on, they could fall off even more. But if they do give them control inside and those older, more experienced players and those mentality monsters that Alonso has referred to, then I do think they could push back into those European spots, back into the Champions League. But Chelsea are one of the main teams to keep an eye on this summer. They have to get it right eventually. Like Law of Averages says, they have to eventually get it right.
Yeah, I don't know, it depends on the model of the club. I'll always say that, sort of similar thing with United. Ever since Ferguson's left, they've sort of had this continuous rollout, especially in the last few seasons, of managers trying to, get them back to their former glory days. And I think it's the way that the club is sort of run with the sort of types of players as well that you employ, not just their abilities. And, you know, you can say the same with Garnacho. Does he put in, I know 100% effort is what a lot of what people question, and the quality now has also kind of fallen too. But yeah, I don't know. It's a model thing, I think. It's how they change their model fundamentally at the core. But as you say, it sounds like they might be doing that, and then that will help them to push on and get it right in terms of a manager who knows the coaching methods, actually getting most of the control over that.
Yeah, but into ninth and just missing out on European football by goal difference, by 3 goals. Probably both of our worst predictions, I'm going to say.
Yeah.
It is the Bees, it is Brentford, and I'm going to let you kick this one off. Where did you predict them, and how do you think they did this season? And why did you predict them to finish where you thought they were going to finish?
Yeah, well, where are we? In ninth, I said Manchester United, which obviously they finished third, but which we'll come on to. But yeah, for Brentford to finish ninth when I anticipated 18th, I thought they'd go down with all the changes, you know, they sort of lost. I know we've touched on it again, but Thomas Frank, you know, leaving the club, you know, and so many key players for them, their goalkeeper, and we talk about, his name has evaded me, Brian Mbeumo, Johan Visa. You know, I just thought it'd be such a difficult season for them, and I couldn't see the way that they'd really invested. But they've completely exceeded expectations for me. Igor Thiago obviously was in the Golden Boot race with Haaland. At one point, Haaland was in a goal drought, and I thought Igor Thiago may just pip him to the accolade. And he's been tremendous, not just his penalties, but, you know, his strength and just sort of all the abilities that he has. He's been a real threat for them and really, I think, dragged them toward a higher position than what we anticipated. I think it says here 22 league goals this season and finishing second, which is a really impressive return when we thought that they'd struggle. So yeah, really commendable, I think, from Brentford, and gutting for them that they just missed out on Europe.
Yeah, I mean, I also predicted Brentford to finish 18th for the same reasons. Lost Thomas Frank, lost Visa, lost Mbeumo. Keith Andrews, this is his first proper managerial job.
Yeah.
So looking at it that way, most people would have said they're going to go down or nearly go down. Ninth at the start of the season, very, very good season for them. But they kind of threw away Europe at the end. So most of the fans are quite unhappy with finishing ninth, which is crazy to say, considering what everyone thought at the start of the season. But missing out on goal difference, they were so bad in the latter stages of the season, threw away so many points, and they probably should have been one of the teams in there getting Europe. But overall, they have had a good season. They deserve a lot of credit, and I'm sure they're going to continue to invest really well, sign some good players, and similarly to what we said for Fulham, Everton, 9 teams in Europe next season, potentially, if Palace do win the Conference League. This could be a big opportunity again for them next season to break into Europe and play European football for, I'm pretty confident, to say, the first time.
Yeah, that would be incredible. It'd be interesting to see. I mean, it depends if Igor Thiago can continue sort of that top tally, because it might be, you know, sort of one-off. But they've got a really strong squad, and if they build on that, as you say, just to miss out, and because of those results toward the end of the season, you'd maybe likely back them to try and get Europe next season.
Yeah, I think missing out on Europe for them, similarly to Fulham, is going to cause a few issues in terms of the transfer window. They're going to miss out on some players who will likely now go to the likes of Bournemouth, Sunderland, Brighton, Villa, European football. The Bees apparently put in an offer last week of about €45 million for Said Al-Malo, who Brighton, Chelsea, Newcastle, even City, I think, are chasing as well. But missing out on Europe is probably going to be the reason why they don't get him if they don't get him. And it's these sort of players where that goal difference missing out could have some big implications in terms of that. But I still expect them to do well next season. And they have done so well this season.
Yeah, no, they really have. It is really impressive considering we thought they'd get relegated. So I think, yeah, absolute credit, especially as you say, to Keith Andrews when it was his first sort of professional job. So yeah, I think for them it's just unbelievable, and yeah, I think arguably one of the standout teams this season.
But into 8th, the first European spot, Conference League. It was Brighton. I will start on this one. I predicted us to finish 5th. At the start of the season, everyone said that was a crazy prediction, and even now I don't think that was an outrageous prediction. We only finished 7 points off 5th, and with 2 games to go, there was a very decent chance that we could finish 5th. We could have still finished 5th. We lost 1-0 to Leeds and then 3-0 to United in the final 2 games. But if we had continued that good run of form and won those 2 games, we would have been even closer to 5th. So finishing 8th Conference League, I'm very, very happy with that. We had a run of 1 win in 13, 14, 15 games. Then we went, I think 8 or 9 games, only losing 1, drawing 1. Really, really good run there. Slightly inconsistent throughout the season, but overall, 2 8th place finishes for Brighton, 2 8th place finishes for her. So the best back-to-back seasons the club has ever had. In Europe next season, the Conference League, can we win it? That'll be a conversation for the next few weeks and months. But I'm happy with my prediction. I think we had a good season. Overall, can't complain at European football. Again, did rely on Liverpool the last game to get a draw with Brentford. But yeah, happy with the season. Big summer window coming up. Likely to lose Van Hecker. Sonny March has gone. Very, very sad about that. Adam Webster has gone or going. Joel Veltman probably going to go. Bart Verbruggen could go. Carlos Baleba could go. Big summer. But if we bring in the names that we've been linked with, and even there'll be more that we haven't been linked with who we bring in, I think we have a good chance next season. But overall this season, pretty happy.
Yeah, I actually predicted Brighton to finish 8th. I thought they'd consistently sort of be at that spot. I was thinking, will they get Europe, won't they? Obviously, you being a Brighton fan and sort of educating me on how positive you were about where they'd finish, I was like, okay, I'll put them to get that Conference League spot, which they have. As you say, it was sort of nip and tuck at the end. But yeah, I think really strong sort of season in terms of Danny Welbeck, obviously being your leading goal scorer, I believe, this season. He's, consistently sort of been there. I know you maybe have, or people have different opinions sort of on him, but amazing there where he's sort of aging like a fine wine, I think is a phrase some people use with him, and still being there for Brighton and scoring those goals. And yeah, I think you mentioned as well Ferdy Kadioglu sort of being player of the season, which is impressive. I haven't watched too much of Brighton, I have to admit, but a fullback sort of doing so well. I'm sure you can talk more on him, but yeah, clearly some key players for them. I think Minte, if I'm right in saying, has sort of developed as well. Maybe on the other side, Matoma maybe not so much. That'll be interesting, as you say, the summer transfer window, who kind of goes with Van Heck, aside from maybe that mistake that he made against Leeds, sort of being a key part as well in that back line. So I think, yeah, a really strong team, quality as well amongst it. And, we unfortunately couldn't see too much of Stefanos Simas, who was, really young, staying with Kostelas, these sorts of players who I know Hertzler said would need a lot of time. But we hope maybe we'd see more of Stefanos Simas in that striker role. And unfortunately, his injury has meant he's basically been ruled out for this whole season. But those are the exciting players that you're investing in. And as you mentioned, El Mala as well as one. So no, I don't know how I managed to predict it right, but very pleased to see that they finished 8th, got European football, and yeah, I said I think it would help them not having European football this season amongst the other teams that do. I've wrote down here less games, so yeah, I think that's definitely helped and a strong, I guess, season. But as you say, disappointing that those last 2 results didn't go your way. Otherwise, you could have been higher and got maybe Champions League or Europa League football.
Yeah, that's kind of thing. It's kind of I would say bittersweet, kind of 50-50. Like, we probably should have done slightly better because of how many teams were in Europe, but still, European football, can't complain. You touched on a few players. Danny Welbeck, I think 13, 14 goals. Fantastic. Last 4 or 5 weeks, he dropped off massively, which was really disappointing. That's probably why he hasn't gone to the World Cup. Minte, interesting one, is either fantastic or woeful, no in between, but he's developing. He's going to be fantastic next season if we keep hold of him. Has been linked with Liverpool as a Salah replacement, so that'll be one to watch. Matoma had a hamstring injury. He's had to have surgery on that, so missed the last few games. Stefanos Simas, so annoying, that ACL rupture. Was finally getting into the team, started his first game, but next season I think he can do really, really well. Might be similar to Kadioglu. Started getting in the team, then picked up a season-ending injury. This season, player of the season, as you said. So well done to him. Has been fantastic, and he'll be one we struggle to keep hold of past next season, I think. But yeah, good enough season. Into 7th, though, I think we need to take a moment. Sunderland, absolutely incredible season to finish 7th after getting promoted through the playoffs, getting Europa League football, completely exceeding everyone's expectation. I said they'll be 17th. I thought they would just about stay up, but they've done so much better there with the signings that they made. Granit Xhaka, Robin Roos in goal, fantastic. Mukiele, Gratuda, Brian Brobby, they invested so well. And to be honest, watching them play, start the season, they deserve to be here. Dropped off midway through, but overall, probably the best team this season.
Yeah, I think they really are the standout in terms of what they've managed to do. I mean, I predicted Sunderland all the way down in 17th, so to finish in 7th and get that Europa League spot is unbelievable. I think we had high hopes for them to stay up, but, to build on that has been incredible. And you mentioned Brobby there being their leading goal scorer this season, I believe. Granit Xhaka in the midfield for that leadership, that experience, and still that quality, at an elder age. I think he could be, standout signing of the season, arguably, if we come on to that in a little bit. So no, I think they've been unbelievable and been really, a tough team to beat, especially as we mentioned at the beginning of the season, the Stadium of Light we thought would be, a really interesting and tough place to go. And I think they had a really strong run of form there during the season. But yeah, they've really exceeded all expectations. And yeah, I don't know exactly what I wrote originally on them, but as we say, kind of blown everything out of the water in terms of what we thought would be capable for them with the signings they brought in the summer.
I think they did exactly what we thought they were going to do in terms of they'd start the season really, really well, like a house on fire. Then AFCON, they drop off, which is exactly what happened. And then they bring it back a bit at the end of the season. But they've done it to an extent that nobody would have expected. And I'm going to say they're probably the best newly promoted team ever.
Yeah, that is an audacious claim, but as you say, pretty much that is a very strong argument to say so because of the fact that they have finished so high and got European football literally coming up from the Championship. So, yeah, perhaps they are. You've seen more teams than I have sort of over the history of the Premier League.
But yeah, I mean, Sunderland are kind of a case of how quickly football can change. They were down and out in League One. They were doing so bad. Then they get to the playoff final. Tommy Watson, that's another story, was signed for Brighton, booed by quite a few Sunderland fans in the final few games, scored the winner at Wembley in the playoff final, then joined Brighton, didn't really play, moved on loan to Millwall, didn't really play, and then Sunderland go and finish higher than Brighton and get Europa League football. Football is just absolutely crazy at times, but the Black Cats, we'll get onto their manager a bit at the end, but he's been fantastic and arguably deserves some sort of award this season. But into 6th now. Could have been Champions League football if City didn't mess it up on the final day. But another team who did fantastically well is Bournemouth. I predicted them to finish 12th. I thought they'd have a decent average season. They lost most of their back line. Hoyson, Zabani, Semenyo went halfway through the season. They lost so many players. But as you'd expect, they replaced them with Krupi, Rayan, Senesi in there as well. Hill's come in from, I think, the academy or signed them for cheap quite a few years ago, and he's done incredibly well as well and developed, and they are playing their first European campaign. So well done to Bournemouth, well done to the Cherries. Where did you think they were going to come, and how do you think their season went?
Yeah, well, finishing 6th is incredible, and as you mentioned, they're almost got Champions League football, but Europa League I think will be really exciting for them, and it'll be a really tough challenge, but I think it'll be good to see how far they can go. I mean, I think they're going to be one of the sort of teams to watch, and especially Vitality Stadium having Europa League football will be incredible. I was only there the other week for the Manchester City game, and yeah, sort of being at that ground for the first time. Obviously, it's not the biggest, but it's one of those older grounds, those sort of traditional ones. So yeah, it'd be really exciting for them. But I originally predicted them in 11th, so yeah, they superseded my expectations. I thought they'd be around mid-table, but nowhere near where they were. You mentioned the losses in their back line. But yeah, with Ryan and Krupi sort of replacing those players as well, sort of in the higher attacking areas, have been unbelievable. I know you absolutely rate the duo so highly, and Krupi coming in from League Two, his first season in the Premier League and doing so well. I mean, I can't remember off the top of my head how many goals he's got, but he's really led them this season and been such a joy to watch. Scored a spectacular goal, unfortunately, against City, actually, which ended our title hope. So yeah, someone who you can't give any time and space, and his finishing is unbelievable from what I saw at least. But yeah, impressive. I don't know how many goals Evan Nilsson scored. Obviously not the most prolific striker, but he's also helped them out at times this season. And yeah, I think all credit where it's due to Bournemouth because it's an incredible feat for them. And as you say, they almost managed to get Champions League, which would have been even more unprecedented, I think.
Yeah, I mean, credit has to go to Bournemouth, Brighton, Brentford, these sort of clubs that use that Moneyball style and invest properly and sign players properly. But I think the biggest elephant in the room here is Iriola leaving. Only a few points off Champions League, got Bournemouth into the Europa League. If he goes to Palace, as we said, is that a backward sideward step? Maybe they have Europa League football as well if they win tonight. Maybe they don't. Or if he goes to Leverkusen, I rate Leverkusen. I think they're a fantastic team. But surely you'd rather stay at Bournemouth there than them. I don't know. But I'm kind of 50-50 on it.
Yeah, I think it'd be a really, really big loss. I mean, I'm a massive fan of Iriola, the way he talks, the way he's led this team, and I love everything about sort of the way that they play, especially with their, transitions at times, I think are very sort of frightening as well when they go forward. So it's something you don't see, all teams doing anymore. But yeah, I absolutely love, as I say, the way they've played under Iriola, and it's a real shame that he is going to depart. I don't know, as you say, perhaps why at this time, especially if they've got Champions League, what an amazing occasion that would be for him to take them there. Same with Europa, which will be there next season. But yeah, it'd be interesting to see who they manage to replace him with, because their trajectory under him has been great. And yeah, it'll be a massive loss, I'm sure, and someone who's been linked with, some of the top jobs. I know some fans, even wanted him at City, or, you can look at all these different sorts of jobs, and Iriola is in those conversations. So a real big miss.
Yeah, I mean, he's just got linked yesterday morning with the AC Milan job, which is absolutely insane. But they're also in the Europa League, so he could be facing Bournemouth next season if he goes there.
Mm.
Overall, Bournemouth, fantastic season, one of the best performing teams this season. They have already appointed their next manager, Marco Rose. It's going to be another case of chaos football from Bournemouth, but it's going to be so fun to watch next season. And to be honest, I could see them making the final, even winning that Europa League. But again, that depends on this summer, who they keep, who they sign. But into the top five, the 5 Champions League spots. In fifth with was a team we praised so much in the predictions video.
Yeah.
And I don't think anyone expected them to finish this low and that many points behind the champions. But it is Liverpool. I predicted them to win the league. What's gone wrong for them?
Yeah, I mean, I predicted him to win the league as well. But I think it's a case of, Arne Slot, first season he won the league, and I think credit has to be to his tactical adeptness, because everyone said he could adapt so well in games. So I don't think that's completely gone, but there's definitely been questions over coming into his second season. You've got new signings who, we thought would absolutely win in the league, and there'd be miles clear. Alexander Isak, talking about their fullbacks as well, Kirkes, Frimpong, obviously Florian Wirtz, who I think we'll come on to as one of the players we name for our individual accolades at the end of this season. And arguably, he's nowhere near. His performances, yes, have definitely improved, but stats-wise, maybe not as much as we'd anticipated. So, yeah, things have certainly gone wrong, I think, for Arne Slot, trying to actually navigate how he's going to play everyone. There's been this talk consistently, I think it's almost like a meme at this point, of 4-4-2, play Isak and Ekitike, who we haven't even mentioned, actually, as one of their signings. I think he's been a really important player for them in that striker role, with obviously Isak getting an injury and arguably not being good enough, I think, in the end to sort of compete with Ekitike. But yeah, I think it's been really tough for Slot to kind of navigate it, and I also think the signings ultimately haven't been as good as they thought. We've mentioned Wirtz, but I think the fullbacks haven't been foolproof at all. So it's been really tough, I think, for them to know who to play. And Andy Robertson's probably played more of a role than he thought he would at times in his last season for Liverpool. So yeah, I think it's just not been what they thought it would be. And we can also talk about Salah. I think he's been an interesting character throughout the entire season, for when he spoke, when he hasn't spoke, but also his speaking on the pitch hasn't been great this season in terms of the performances he's put in. A lot of fans have preferred to see someone like Rio and Gamoa playing rather than a Gakpo or a Salah, and maybe he hasn't been as given as many minutes as the Liverpool fans want. So I think there's a lot of unrest between the Liverpool fans and Slot of who they want to see play, how they're playing. They just say is poor, boring to watch, all of these sorts of things. And we never really have associated that with Liverpool before, especially under Jurgen Klopp. And I didn't think we'd see that at all this season. I thought it would be the most attacking, most exciting, Gravenberch in the midfield, McAllister, these sorts of players. But I think it's completely fallen off.
Yeah, I mean, I think everything that could have gone wrong for Liverpool went wrong this season. They signed quite a few players, spent loads of money. Most of them picked up injuries. Ekitike was out for quite a while. Isak broke his leg and was out for quite a while. I think Kirkes and Frimpong both picked up injuries, so that went wrong. But they also signed too many players, I think. Leone picked up a big ACL injury as well. That they kind of had to change the whole team. It didn't go well for Slot. Salah spoke out many times, as you said. He didn't perform.
No.
And it's got to a point where I'm surprised that he is going to be in charge next season. It looks to be that way. I thought they'd let him go and they'd go and appoint Xavi Alonso before Chelsea got him, but that is not the case. Still, though, Champions League football, at least they've got that.
Yeah, I think that was really important. And at one point, that was sort of uncertain. I know they just needed a few points toward the end just to get it over the line, and they managed to. But at one point, I was thinking, maybe this could change. I mean, Aston Villa established that fourth place. Otherwise, if they were competing, it could have knocked them out. So yeah, it was touch and go, I think, for Arne Slot. And as you say, he just about stayed in the job. But for me, I sort of don't know where they go from there. Obviously, if they get Isak back from his, broken leg, which is an absolute nightmare. I think he's never really actually got the chance to play too many minutes and hit the ground running. And when we've seen him, he has looked a shadow of himself from when he was at Newcastle. And maybe that comes down to sort of the service he got there. With Murphy was key, and a lot of Newcastle fans have said, well, it's not as easy. There you go, like when you move to a bigger club. So it's going to be interesting to see how they navigate next season. But I don't know how they sort of grow from here in terms of gaining the fans' trust again, because a lot of them obviously stand on Salah's side with the way he's spoken out about the way that they're performing and it's not good enough. And also, just as I say, like Rio and Gamoa not playing as many minutes as fans want. With Van Dijk, it sounds like he's not leaving because Salah had his send-off, but Van Dijk seems to be staying around. And I think he's arguably been at fault a lot this season as well. Dealing with those second balls has been a big problem for Liverpool. And that sort of leadership in the back line, him and Konate, I don't think have been foolproof at all. So there's a lot of questions, I think, in my mind over how they improve ahead of next season and ahead of a big season for Slot as well.
Yeah, another team to keep an eye on this season. But as you mentioned, in fourth, Aston Villa, fantastic season. Considering they started the year, I don't think they scored for 6, 7, 8 game weeks, which is insane to think that they finished in fourth. Got Champions League football. To be honest, it didn't even matter where they finished in the league because they won the Europa League pretty comfortably there in that final. I picked them to finish 8th, but they exceeded my expectations. Unai Emery, one of the best managers in the league, deserves so much credit. Rodgers, Watkins had a fantastic end to the season. So yeah, well done to Aston Villa, 4th place. I was quite wrong on that one again.
Yeah, I think originally I put them... Sorry, I'm going to have to scroll all the way down. I put them in 7th. So I was saying that they were going to get Europa League, and I thought it'd be a strong season for them, but nowhere near did I put them to be 4th. I mean, we normally, associate that with the likes of Liverpool, City, Arsenal, Chelsea, those teams, exactly who were the 4 that I put in the top. But in a team where there's been sort of lack of consistency, and even, as you mentioned there with Villa, especially in the beginning of the season, not scoring, I was thinking, how are they going to sort of come back from this? But you mentioned Watkins having a good end to the season. Obviously, Rodgers in the midfield, John McGinn, will always give everything, and I think he's a fan favourite with the Villa fans. So, yeah, I think they're a special team, and one who, as you mentioned, being under Unai Emery, top manager, again, someone I really like. I think him and Areola are the sort of standouts for me of managers that I kind of think are top. So yeah, it's been really impressive. Not too much more than what I expected, like 7th to 4th. But Champions League football as well will be a really exciting prospect for them, as you mentioned, both for finishing in the top 4, but actually for winning the Europa League.
Yeah, I mean, I do think they're going to lose Morgan Rodgers. That looked like that one's guaranteed to happen. Even there, they have got Champions League football. Maybe playing in the Champions League will impact them a bit more next season. We shall see, but they've done so well. Going to be another big summer for them. But yeah, Aston Villa, I don't think there's too much more to say on them. So into the top 3, into 3rd was Manchester United. I predicted them to finish 10th. And to be honest, I'm not too mad at this prediction, because it looked like that was going to be the case until a few months ago when they appointed Michael Carrick. Ruben Amorim had an absolute disastrous time at Manchester United. Proved me wrong in terms of I thought he was going to be great. He was absolutely rubbish. Carrick's come in, done so well, completely revitalised the team, and he deserves to get that contract, and he deserves to be there next season permanently. It's just a question of, can they handle the 4 competitions?
Yeah, it's true, as you say, their form under Carrick has been top, and I actually thought when there were sort of conversations around whether he would stay or not, I thought, well, you kind of got to because of how he's done. As you mentioned, only 1 competition, but I think that'd be really unfair for United to continue in this model of going for top names and it not working out. Ruben Amorim, as you mentioned, it didn't go well at all. Sort of square pegs in round holes, the way he was trying to play his style of football didn't suit the players. They weren't on board, and we've mentioned how important that is to have a manager on board and the fans on board, especially with Arne Slot, and it's the same I think with the football they played under Amorim. So yeah, I think for me it just is, as I say, has revitalised the team, and they've managed to get those results toward the end of the season and find that stability. And I think also that that intensity and that intent is the word I think I'm looking for, which they haven't always had. We always question United's desire to win, and I think under Carrick they've gone back to actually wanting to play for the manager and wanting to get results. So yeah, really top, I think, end to the season for them. Obviously, Bruno Fernandes breaking the assist record. Pains me to say as a big Kevin De Bruyne fan, but, it's a top, I think, performance from him. He's been vital for them this season and continues to be, someone who's influential in the midfield for them. And it'll be interesting to see sort of where things go with their forwards as well, with Brian Mbuemo and Benjamin Sesko, these sorts of players who I still don't think are, yet to sort of perform at their best. I know Sesko, I think, has been injured as well. But yeah, really strong end to the season. As we see, or as we say, and we will see, it depends how they can manage all the competitions.
Yeah, I mean, again, another team, it depends on the summer. But watching them that last game of the season at the Amex, they were playing like Barcelona. It was just insane to watch the difference between Amorim's United and Carrick's United. And I genuinely think they have a shot at the title next season. They were just so good. They've been so good to watch under Carrick. They've gone back to basics and they just want to win games, which is fantastic to see. But we will hop over to the other side of Manchester now. In second was Manchester City. I'll let you lead this one.
I don't even know where to start. I actually predicted Manchester City in second, so I got 2 predictions, I think, right overall. 3. Who was a third? I know I got Brighton bang on, City,
and there was one in the middle, I think.
Yeah, there must have been. I think it was Everton or someone like that.
Everton or Fulham, somewhere in there.
It was Everton, I've just seen. But yeah, with Manchester City, I don't know. I think as a City fan myself, I'm never going to predict them to be first. Maybe next season I might, in terms of just trying to back my own team. I think that's something that I don't do as much as you do as a Brighton fan. I don't know. I just thought with the signings that Liverpool made that we'd come second, and that obviously proved to be the case, but we were second to Arsenal. But yeah, I think City just kind of thrown too many games away at times. Still, I think our defence is developing. We still seem to get embroiled in these sorts of games where if it's sort of transitions, we can't manage to deal with them. And, the pressure we saw, especially against Everton away, was terrible in terms of the defensive errors that we make. And I think that's our own, as I say, problem in terms of defending and giving away leads, which we've done at times. I know we drew 2-2 with Forest, drew 0-0 with Sunderland, where we missed lots of opportunities, drew 1-1 with Brighton, and that was that sort of January patch, which was really poor, I think, in terms of our output, converting our chances and then conceding goals, which, ideally we shouldn't. So, yeah, I think it's been tough in that way. Our defence is always going to be questionable. I think it's something that needs time. But I know a lot of City fans have also said it's the midfield, which will be a really key sticking point with Bernardo Silva leaving. I think we're not gaining as much control in the midfield as we used to. Maybe questions over Rodri not being at his best and then Gonzalez not being given enough time. But yeah, I just think that midfield, perhaps as well, Bernardo Silva's sort of career. I mean, he's still been great this season and he'll run and run and run. But that control, I think we've sort of lacked. So I don't think it's all on the defence. But yeah, there's so many things you could say as well. We talked about the forward line. Erling Haaland, of course, won the Golden Boot, which, we'll come on to about who we predicted for that. But yeah, again, he continues to be that finisher, but we still I don't think, play him in as much as we should. We don't play to his strengths, which I'd like to see a bit more transition football, one-on-one, sort of get Erling one-on-one with the keeper more next season. If we do have Maresca in charge, who knows if that'll be the case. But under Guardiola, it was all about control, and I don't think we unleashed Haaland as much as we could have. And same with the wingers as well, with that sort of assist that they've had. It's still, Doku's improved 100%. He's been an incredible player this season, but still perhaps not consistent enough. And yeah, he had a big goal drought Erling at one point as well because of that, and that didn't help us. So yeah, there's so much to say, but I think in general, sort of some good, really strong results, really good performances that pulled us back in the title race when we had to beat Liverpool at Anfield. We also beat Arsenal at the Etihad, and at that point the title was in our hands. But again, as I mentioned, not foolproof still adapting, still new players, sort of like Gehi in the back line, Kuznetsov still quite young. That sort of transition, I think, meant that we threw away some points, and that's how the title sort of slipped from our hands right at the end, really.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree, probably even to a greater extent than you did, because I predicted you to finish 6th, which is actually a stupidly bad shout. But I don't think you would have been as close or anywhere near to the title as you were if it wasn't for the January window. Antoine Semenyo, Mark Gehi, 2 fantastic players, completely changed the team, I think. They've played so well. Gehi did make that one mistake, but everyone makes a couple of mistakes. Done really well, and I think under Maresca next season, that looks like it's done. A 3-year contract signed, apparently. I think they'll be fantastic. They've learned, Gehi's learned from that mistake. Kusanov's getting better and better. You've got Vitor Reis coming in to the back line next season by the looks of it into the squad. Elliot Anderson in that midfield is going to be huge. Maybe Enzo Fernandez. That's kind of 50-50 at the moment if that's one that does happen. But yeah, I think next season under Maresca will be a transition season, like I thought this season would be. Yeah. But You've had a decent enough season. You finished second. I don't think you can be too disappointed with that. Won the domestic double. There's always that. But Pep Guardiola leaving, I think the big question here is how will that go with Maresca, a new manager in charge, and no Pep? And also, it came out yesterday. I mean, we've had this so many times over the last few years, but apparently they're very, very confident there is going to be a decision on the 115 charges the next couple of weeks, which, I mean, could reshift the whole league if that negative 60 points does come into play. We'll be having a very, very, very different conversation when that does come out, but we'll forget about that for now. How do you see next season going with Maresca quickly?
Yeah, just quickly with the 115, it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. But all I'll just say is sort of the players that we've signed, it's not like if we were to get a points deduction, you'd imagine the players would leave, but a lot of them are committed to the club, so I don't think it will be a massive amount of points. I could be completely wrong, and as you say, I'm sure we'll discuss it when the news comes out, but I think maybe a fine. But yeah, it's interesting how it's dragged out so long, and I wouldn't be so confident that it'll come out in a few weeks, because as you mentioned, it just continuously gets pushed and pushed and pushed forward and forward, or further back if you like. I don't know whose decision that is, but we'll see what the decision is between Manchester City and the Premier League. But no, with Pep, I mean, I was at the game, the last game of the season against Aston Villa. I think it was all about the farewells because we didn't play well at all and Villa looked like they wanted it more. But yeah, those farewells I think really hit home for me how big those players were for us. It is officially an end of an era. I mean, I got into football and Manchester City specifically because of Pep and the way that we played and because of Bernardo and John particularly as an England player. And what they've done for the club is amazing. So I think it's not even just Pep going, it's the whole thing of losing, Bernardo Silva in that midfield, as you say. Elliot Anderson should be a great addition if we manage to get him, which seems likely. But for Pep, I don't know. My dad, for example, he's one of many fans who sort of thinks this is the right time. We need something a bit more different. We need it to be more diverse. I know you've said that for a long time with our play being a bit stagnant, too much possession, too much sideways passing, and then teams like Bournemouth who are absolutely brilliant on the break, and saying we saw that with Madrid this season, who knocked us out of the Champions League. They are deadly on the transition, and we don't do that enough, considering we have a lot of pacey players. So I'm hoping that may be the case under Maresca, but I feel like Maresca, great manager, but I'm also like, is he very similar to Pep? Obviously, he was Pep's assistant during the treble season, won, countless, multiple trophies, I think it was, with the academy at Manchester City, so he knows the ethos, but surely that ethos is control. So I'm not entirely sure, but obviously he did so well with Chelsea, won against PSG, and I think that was the Club World Cup he won as well, if I'm not mistaken. So, he's managed to get silverware with the Chelsea team. You can only imagine he's going to get silverware with Manchester City. It's just the way we play under Maresca. I'm hoping it'll be slightly different to Pep, because it did feel like that was the right time for his era of dominance to come to an end.
Yeah, I think so. I think it'll be quite similar with the possession, but I think he'll be a bit better on the counter attack and those transitional moments.
Yeah.
But speaking of dominance, unfortunately, we do have to go there. Unfortunately for you, I said it most of the season. I think they're going to get it over the line, and they did. Winning the league was Arsenal. I did predict them to come fourth. I didn't think they'd have enough this season. I thought next season will be the time they do it once Gyökeres sort of settles. He had an up and down season, to be fair. Arsenal, it wasn't pretty, but they won the league. They deserved to win the league. The set piece thing is a silly argument, in my opinion. You score goals how you score goals. You win the set pieces. You just got to score the set pieces. But yeah, Arsenal win the league. They deserved it. First time in a long, long time. Poor prediction from me. How did you predict them, and how do you think their season went? Obviously, you've got that Champions League final coming up very, very soon, which I think they will win. No Hakimi, apparently no Dembele for PSG either. I think Arsenal go into the game as favourites if that is the case.
Really? I still think Kvaratskhelia, Doué, I just think surely they go in as favourites. But I also think PSG win, and I know we've had that complete difference over the last few weeks. I do think it'll be tighter, though, than what some people are saying, like it'll be a rout for PSG. Don't think so. I think Arsenal's defence is top. And I think, arguably, if we're talking about them, I think that's why they've been so good this season. I saw a stat the other day which said how many 1-0 wins they got this season. I don't know how many it was, so I'm not going to try and guess. But, that consistency of having a strong backline and then just needing to score the one goal. Yes, some people say it's not pretty, and, I'd prefer to play attacking football, but ultimately you want the results. And they do also attack. We've seen, as you mentioned, Gyökeres maybe needing a bedding in season. Actually, I think he's got, was it like around 15 goals or 10 goals this season in the Premier League? So, yep. Yeah, a strong return. I think he's been someone who they've needed just to finish the opportunities. Obviously, he hasn't maybe scored as many as what people wanted, but also he's not ever going to be an Erling Haaland, I don't think. That sort of player who just scores so many. So he's done what he's needed to do, I think, to contribute. And yeah, I think for them, as I say, really strong back line, but also just a sort of a strong team, as you say, using those set pieces, using their physicality from them. I don't think it's not so much the set pieces. Like, I think it's really important to use set pieces, and it's something that other teams don't use as much as they should. I mean, City arguably have never used corner kicks under Guardiola as a strategy to score, and the amount of corner kicks we get, it's really infuriating. So I like the way that Arsenal have done that. They've looked at different ways that City don't use and used them to win the league, which is fair. I just think it's all the holding and stuff which people maybe say when a rule comes in they shouldn't be allowed to do that. Then maybe that'll be a discussion for future of how Arsenal now deal with that if they're not allowed to sort of hold and crowd out the keeper. But this season it's been allowed, so completely legitimate way to do it. And yeah, I think also their squad depth has helped. Like we talk about them being in the Champions League, obviously they got knocked out of the Cups, which arguably is just a product of trying to compete for the league, trying to get their first one in 22 years. Sometimes you have to sort of sacrifice things. But yeah, I think that squad depth has really helped. Obviously, they've had Eze, who can sometimes come on. They've got Madueke, Martinelli, Trossard, all these different wingers. And, you know, Saka hasn't always been consistent, but I think they've had enough of each player to contribute and to get it over the line. So, yeah, it looked nervy toward one point, which I think is Arsenal's sort of specialty toward that business end of the season. I guess just how much they want it, it makes them sort of wobble. But most importantly, they managed to get it over the line after City faltered against Everton. So, yeah, I think real credit where it's due, and as I'm sure we'll come on to, Rice being a key player for them. Zubimendi maybe not having so good of a second part to the season, but a signing we mentioned in the pod prior to this whole season, you know, happening as being kind of a key player for them in that defensive midfield role, and he's been there for them. So yeah, I think strong additions, and credit to Mikel Arteta because he's got it over the line and given the Arsenal fans joy, which they've been waiting for 22 years now.
Yeah, I mean, I'll touch on the dark art things. I think it's really interesting.
Yeah.
I think the time wasting needs to be sorted, but that isn't an exclusively Arsenal thing. That is most teams in the league have time wasted so much this season. The holding thing I think is interesting. If they remove that, you might as well just scrap football because football is a contact sport. Every team holds from corners and set pieces. Arsenal have just done it well. Done it so much better than other teams. You are allowed to hold players. There's nothing wrong with that. As long as you're not literally yanking them down, you're allowed a bit of contact in there. Arsenal have just done it well with Saliba and Gabriel. They're just units. Nobody can move them out of the way. So they've used what they have. They've done it really, really well. So fair play to them. Can they do it again next season? Can they back it up? We shall see. Again, it depends on summer windows. As I said, I think United could win the league next season, but it depends on their window. If Arsenal go and strengthen even more, maybe get another winger to replace Martinelli and Trossard, and maybe another fullback in there, and another backup striker, they could be fantastic next season. But before we go on to our other predictions of top scorer and so on, we will say our final points score. So who's done better at prediction. The way we've done it is you get a point for every position you are off, and whoever has the least points is the winner. What was your points tally for these predictions?
I think I'll do a drum roll. Mine was 88 points.
88 points.
Very high, very high.
Do you think you've won, or do you think you have lost?
I don't know. I think it's going to be tight, but I think I might have just pipped it. I don't know.
Well, I can tell you it wasn't tight at all. And the winner is you because I got 104 points.
Oh, geez. You were trying to compete with the 115 charges tally. Yeah. I don't know where we won and lost it. I think it might have been
Tottenham.
Yeah, okay, that's fair. No, where did you put them? Because I put them 5th originally.
I put them first, so there's 2 points there. Sunderland, we both had the same. Brighton kind of threw it off. City threw it off as well a little bit. So a couple of the middle ones that I got a bit more wrong than you did. So well done. You are the winner there. We'll be back again next season for sure to do it again, where I will get my revenge. I will get it back next season, get that title. But you are the first Midweek Fixture Podcast Premier League predictions winner. Well done there. I'll check in a few weeks, see if there's any corruption going on there, any charges that need to be made. But we'll go on now to our other predictions. Top scorer, top assister, player of the season, young player of the season, most clean sheets, manager of the season, and signing of the season. Top scorer, I will start with this one because it's insane. I said Hugo Ekitike would score 35 Premier League goals.
Oh my God. I forgot you said that. I actually had Haaland as my top scorer. I didn't
And it
predict
was
a goal tally, but yeah.
Erling Haaland, so well done there. You won that one. Ekatike, I think, could have scored loads more if he didn't get those few injuries, but Haaland is Haaland. Top assister, I think we went with the same person here. I went with Florian Wirtz.
Okay. I went with Cole Palmer.
You went with Cole Palmer. That one's really interesting because he should have been up there, but he's had a really, really poor season. It was Bruno Fernandes in the end. Did get that record of 21, kind of. I don't think he should have got it because that Dorgu goal was definitely an own goal against Brighton. Heads it against the bar, comes back, hits Verbruggen's hand, then goes in.
So
I think that's an own goal. I think that's an own goal, but they're saying that any shot that hits the woodwork, then hits a player and goes in, counts as a goal. I don't know, that seems a bit weird to me, but Bruno Fernandes...
Yeah, it feels like they're making up rules as they go along. I didn't see the goal, I need to watch it back.
Either way, he was the top assister this season. He's had a fantastic season, has carried United for a large part of the season.
Yeah.
Again, next season, I think he signs a new contract, will still be there and will be a big, big part of Carrick's season. Player of the season, I said Florian Wirtz.
Ooh, I said Alexander Isak.
So we both went down the Liverpool route there. Yeah. It was Bruno Fernandes. I think that was deserved. Some would say Declan Rice, but I think Fernandes deserved it in the end, looking at how bad that Amorim team was and how well he was playing still there and getting these assists. Yeah, tell me a little bit about Bruno Fernandes. What do you think of his season quickly? Because he has won a couple of awards here.
Yeah, no, I think it's been spectacular. And we were talking about maybe Rice or maybe a Zubimendi, obviously the second part of his season, maybe not so much. But we thought because Arsenal won the league, unfortunately, they'd sort of give the player of the season to one of those players. But we thought that Bruno Fernandes deserved it. And yeah, I think rightfully so. His assists are unbelievable. I know we've had talks over who's better, Kevin De Bruyne or Fernandes, but both have such an incredible eye for a pass and also the execution. I think he's been absolutely top. So no, credit where it's due. And as you say, to be playing in a team where not everyone always performs and it's really tough. And I don't think he's won enough, awards as he should with the club he's been at. Not the same as a Harry Kane, but that sort of player who's stayed at a club, really being pivotal to them, but not won as much silverware. I think he's been sort of selfless in staying with them. And if he extends, I think he'll be a massive addition again, or a massive help to Carrick next season, especially with the extra competitions they've got.
Yeah, I mean, I think the Nottingham Forest game in Game Week 37 kind of sums up United and him. He did get these 21 assists. He probably should have had 21 assists in that game. United missed so many chances that he put on a plate. So well done to him. Moving on to Young Player of the Season. I don't even know why I went with this one. I went with Matthias Tell, who was left out of Tottenham's European squads. He hasn't had the best of seasons at all. I don't even know how much he's played this season, to be honest. Who did you go with and who won it?
I wrote Adam Wharton down, but I had in brackets not convinced on Cherky, because I know we've discussed him, but I am absolutely convinced on Cherky. I absolutely love that man. Just as a side note, what a maverick. But obviously he only came in, well, he did come in at the beginning of the season, but he only started playing, more consistently under Pep as a starter toward the end or sort of middle. I can't even remember now, it's been such a long season. But yeah, I should have gone with Cherky maybe slightly more than Wharton. I don't know how great of a season he's had. You might be able to let me know on that one. But I think with O'Reilly won Young Player of the Season, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. I think pipped probably Kroupy, and there were quite a few players actually on that list who could have won it. But yeah, obviously as a Manchester City fan, watching O'Reilly week in, week out, winning his duels against some of the best players. Obviously Salah hasn't had too much of a great season, but I remember particularly when we played Liverpool at the Etihad, he was unbelievable. O'Reilly, has done so well against Madueke, against Arsenal at the Emirates. So there are some really standout moments, but I think all season he's shown his skill to basically, wheedle his way out of challenges and between multiple players who are doubling up on him. He's got stature as well to win his headers. We can talk about his box crashing, which we saw, I think, epitomised in the Carabao Cup final for the goals that he scored against Arsenal. And above all else, he showed that intent against Zubimendi to get to the ball first, and he's just got that intent as a young player to really prove himself. So he's an absolute joy to watch in so many different ways. And I know you've sort of said he's wasted as well at full-back, which just shows how good he is as a left-back, and then also coming into the midfield at times this season. I can't talk more highly of him. I absolutely love him, and can't wait to see what he does next season. Hopefully he still starts in the team under Maresca.
Yeah, I mean, my one ask for Maresca, please play him in the midfield. He's such a good midfielder. Yeah, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. Is fully deserved this award. I was having him a shouts for player of the season, so deserved young player of the season. Scored quite a few goals this season. One of the best box crashers in the league. So well done to Nico O'Reilly. Could come for that player of the season award next season. Most clean sheets. We both went with the same person here. I am so confident on that. I don't think we need to touch on it too much. He's by far the best goalkeeper in the league. It is David Raya.
Yeah, 100%. I actually think me and my dad were discussing this the other day. I think he could have been sort of player of the season in some way, or at least Arsenal's player of the season. I think he's been that pivotal. Like, whenever we've watched Arsenal, the saves he makes is just incredible. And I think, the shot stopper that he is, distribution, sort of everything. He's a commanding presence. He wins, corner kick sort of thing, like clears away deliveries, which obviously Donnarumma has been questioned for as a big name in goalkeeping. He's not so strong at that. But David Raya, I think, has got it all, and he's been pivotal, I think, to Arsenal's success in winning those clean sheets. So no surprise that we both predicted him, and I think he deserves a lot of praise for what Arsenal have won, and if they win the Champions League, I think he'll be crucial in that as well.
For sure. But manager of the season, I'll let you touch on this one first.
I put Arne Slot / Pep Guardiola. I was sort of sitting on the fence. I think I went with Slot because if he won the league, I'd be like, incredible, 2 Premier League titles in a row with the team that they got. As we say, I think we're putting Liverpool up for a lot of these individual accolades. I said Pep as a slash because if we won it, which I'm always, secretly hopeful as a fan, that I'd just say it was him. But no, I think this season, I don't know, there are so many different shouts. I mean, you could go with Andoni Iraola for getting Bournemouth to almost Champions League football, but Europa League, and I just love Iraola. But you've got, Regis Labrie, who was for Sunderland, so, a top manager there who arguably has exceeded everyone's expectations to get them into Europa in their first season. I'd particularly probably go with him, but then you could say Mikel Arteta, purely, which I think the Premier League have done. They've given him the award purely because after so many seasons of fighting and narrowly coming up short, he's got it over the line for the Gunners.
Yeah, I mean, Arteta did win it, deserved, won the league, fair enough, you can't really argue against that, but I do think Labrie should have won it. Getting a newly promoted team into the Europa League is just insane. So well done to him, definitely second, but my prediction for this one might have been my worst prediction out of the whole video. I'm so sorry, Tottenham fans. I feel like I jinxed you this season. I predicted young player of the season to be a Tottenham player. I predicted you third, and I predicted manager of the season to be Thomas Frank. And to be honest, frankly, he was probably one of the worst managers this season. So we'll quickly skip over that. And I don't think he'll be getting a Premier League job for a long time. Definitely not a top Premier League job. Signing of the season. Do you know who won this award?
I don't even know, but I have my guess of who I would go for. But yeah.
Who did you go for in our original video, and who do you think won it?
I went with Florian Wirtz originally, which again sounds silly, but I know some Liverpool fans think his performances have been top, and as we mentioned, he's starting to get more assists than that, and I think next season maybe we'll see him develop even further, but especially when you've got unrest in a whole team and sort of uncertainty over who should play, it's never going to help someone's performances, so I think credit to Florian for what he's managed to do, nowhere near what me and you thought. We thought he'd be top assists, and obviously he's come second if you're sort of comparing him in that 10 to Cherky. But yeah, I thought Florian Wirtz was going to be player of the season, but not, unfortunately, for Liverpool fans. But yeah, I think, for me, surely Granit Xhaka. I mean, I know if we're going to talk about Regis Labrie being manager of the season, for me, then I thought maybe Xhaka would be in that conversation at the very least for what he's managed to do for Sunderland, but I'm not actually sure who won it.
So, the Athletics vote was Granit Xhaka. He's been fantastic for them. The captain has led that team to European football, but the actual winner was... This doesn't surprise me, because if you are this player in this position at this team and you're not being spoken about, you've probably had a very good season. It is Lamens for Manchester United.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's an interesting one, as obviously the goalkeeper who came in, didn't he? But yeah, I didn't expect that at all. That's
if you're the United goalkeeper and you're not being spoken about, you've probably done all right, to be fair to him. But my signing of the season, another apology to Tottenham fans. I really have jinxed you this season, but I'm not disappointed with my shout, because halfway through the season, I think the Athletic voted him as the best signing so far after the season. I think he's had a very, very good season overall. That is João Paulinho I went with, and I'm pretty sure Tottenham are going to sign him permanently. He's been very good in their midfield. I'm pretty sure 99% of Tottenham fans want him permanently, so I'm not too mad at this shout. I think he's had a decent season overall.
Yeah, I think he's a top player. Really stood out toward the beginning. Again, I always talk about City, but he played against us and he was definitely player of the match with how just so well he does going forward as well. But just everything he gave, the intensity in the midfield. And yeah, I think he's continued that. Believe he scored. I'm not sure on the last day, but yeah, I think João Palhinha's been key for Spurs. So really exciting if they manage to keep him because he is a real talent.
Yeah, I mean, scored some big goals to keep them up. Scored against Wolves, scored against Everton on the last day.
Mm.
But yeah, overall, you got the top scorer right with Erling Haaland. I didn't get any right there. You had the least points, so well done there. You definitely won these predictions. I think that is it for this one, though. We were aiming for 45 minutes. It's actually been an hour and a half. So I hope you enjoyed this long video. We don't do too many long ones that often, so it makes a nice change there. Coming on, well, the game is Sunday. Might come out Monday, might come out Tuesday, depending on how quickly I can edit it. But it is the Women's FA Cup final. A bit of a split one there for you, Annabel. Manchester City against Brighton. You are in the press box doing commentary, I believe. I am in the Brighton end, so that'll be really cool to watch. And hopefully, Brighton can get the win there and win their first ever major trophy and the women's first ever trophy as well.
Yeah, no, it's true. I'm getting really excited for it. I've just been editing up some content from interviewing some players ahead of the game, Brighton players. So yeah, they all seem really up for it, and I can't wait to see what they manage to do. As you say, sort of split for me because I reported on Brighton Women for quite a few seasons, co-commentated on them for BBC Radio Sussex this season, which I'll be doing at the final, which I can't wait for. I think it's going to be a really special occasion for me. So, massive thank you to Brighton for getting there. It's been a joy to cover them all season, but as a City fan as well, it's sort of difficult. I do think Manchester City, of course, being the newly crowned WSL champions and sort of having that impetus to try and win one more trophy in what has been a historic season for them, I do think they'll go into it as favourites, but Brighton really shouldn't be underestimated. I think the confidence all the players had when I was speaking to them comes from that recent result they got, because they did beat Manchester City 3-2 at the Broadfield Stadium back in the end of April. So I think for them, they've got that blueprint under their belt, and it's going to be super exciting to see if they can execute that on the biggest stage, because of course, I think nerves have played a little bit of a part in Brighton's recent performances. So playing at Wembley is a completely different ball game with the amount of fans that hopefully will be there. So if they can handle the nerves and take the opportunities when they get them and manage to stifle Manchester City, which is a very tall order, then hopefully, as you say, you being on the Brighton end, it will be a fantastic day and a historic one.
Yeah, I mean, if you can get tickets, I think there is still some available, definitely in the neutral area, so you can go make it a really good atmosphere. If not, try and watch it on telly. It'll be a good game, I am sure. Keep an eye out for the vlog as well. But I hope you enjoyed this one. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment your thoughts on our pretty bad predictions, to be honest. Comment your thoughts on your predictions. How did you do this season? And time for the World Cup. There's going to be so much World Cup content coming out very soon. But you know the outro by now. Do it with me. Adios.